Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. In this episode, I chat with actor Langley Kirkwood for an insightful conversation about the state of the world, creativity in turbulent times, and life from the vantage point of Cape Town, South Africa. Langley is known for his powerful performances on screen, especially on one of my favorite shows, Warrior. Beyond the camera, he is a thoughtful thinker, a lover of history, and an artist navigating a world that often feels like it's unraveling. We dove into what it means to create when the world is in chaos, and how he finds meaning and expression amidst political instability and global uncertainty. Langley also emphasized the importance of keeping hope and never giving up. Warrior fans, yes, I asked about the state of the TV series. So listen on to get Langley's take on where the series is headed, plus find out what's for dinner straight out of the Langley Kirkwood kitchen. I've been enjoying these conversations and hope you have too. If you have, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Langley. Nice to see you again.
Great to see you, Mimi. Thank you for having me on.
Please, you're always welcome. At this point, I'm lucky that you make the time for me because you are a busy bee.
I could be busier.
Well, off air, we were saying our hellos, and I was like, "Are you at your house? You're just showing off now. Like this is where
it's a Zoom background. It's a really nice Zoom background.
I'm gonna steal that. So like later when you go off screen, we'll just screenshot that, and I can just be like, coming live from the house of Langley Kirkwood.
Here we go. We can do a plate. A plate shot.
There it is. Oh, we're getting so technical here.
You can't see it because it's kind of overexposed, but Table Mountain's back there somewhere.
Of course it is. Yeah. Oscar and I, of course, missed you in Cape Town, which was
crazy, so
crushing. It was the worst part of Cape Town was that I didn't get to see Langley. It really was.
I wasn't here. I think it was the only part really in the whole middle chunk of the year that I was out of town.
Of course, naturally.
Yeah.
Naturally. But all of your recommendations really were phenomenal. I am still trying to lose the few pounds that I ate my weight in Cape Town. The food, the culture, everybody was just so lovely. But I will say with Table Mountain, the day we were supposed to, go up there and have a picnic and just kind of relax and eat, it was, I don't know if you remember, there was like the storms and it was windy and we could barely like stand still. So we just like kind of ran up there, took our little picture by the little frame and we're like, we were here at Table Mountain. And then we like headed back down the hill. Yeah, it was really windy. It was really windy.
Yeah, there are not many Cape Townians who actually will brave Table Mountain at that time of the year. So well done.
Yeah, just the crazy, stupid tourists.
It was the wettest and wildest winter we've had in years. It was I think it was the wettest winter in history.
Oh, well, that tracks as well. Rainfall. I have my listeners know a little bit about my history, but I was born between two of the biggest snowstorms in New England history. And so like literally we were stuck my parents got stuck in the hospital because it was like, I barely got there in time. And then another snowstorm hit and it was just like, it was madness. Like snow past the doors. People couldn't get out of their homes. People like died on the highway. Like it was, so I bring weather apparently everywhere I go. So, and of course I'm in Florida, all the hurricanes, so everyone blames me.
It was your fault.
That's what people say, but it was coming from the east. Apparently, because from the west, like he kept following us everywhere we went. But it was wild. It was super wild. It was super wild. And one of your amazing recommendations for food was La Colombe, and it was would have been this just beautiful, scenic, we could see the vines and there's this amazing scenery, but literally it felt like Florida hurricane. We were seeing like trees being knocked over and it was
wow.
like crazy. But the food was so amazing, it didn't matter.
Oh, good.
Like I was like, I don't need the view. This restaurant is literally one of our favorite restaurants of all time. And all we do is eat around the world. So thank you for that. Yes, it was fantastic. And after we went, I noticed it made like one of the world's best lists. And so they're getting, and Cape Town is like foodie town now, like the secret's out. And
the secret's out.
Secret's out.
Yeah.
Secret's out.
I think it made Condé Nast. Condé Nast named it the best food destination of the year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So does that mean influx of tourism or just the same?
Well, we hope so. I think, it's always good for the economy. It's terrible for the traffic congestion, but it's great for the economy.
Right. So you kind of have those mixed feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tourist destination. So, we have a cottage on our house, which is an Airbnb. So we rely on the tourism on tourism to generate that little extra income for ourselves. So I think a lot of Cape Townians do.
Right. Yeah. And so, in Orlando being the theme park capital of the world, we feel the same way. On one hand, you're frustrated if there's congestion on the highway. On the other, you're like, no, we need you all to keep our economy going. So I completely get it. I completely get it. But I
did subject my kids, or they subjected me to a week in the theme parks of Orlando when my kids were younger.
It is wild times.
Yeah.
You won't be frequenting again.
No, I checked that box and I was like, yeah, okay. I've done my parental duty.
Right. It feels a little bit like being in prison, my husband said.
Yeah.
The happiest prison on earth.
Yeah, I can do one day, maybe 2 days of theme parks, and we did a week.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't think people realize just the exhaustion. And you're like, what do you mean you're on vacation at a theme park? I'm like, no, it's like 14 hours of go on your feet. And it's not like you're like the most fit, you do the marathons, you do the biking, you do the ultra marathons, and it's pretty tiring, right? How does that compare to like the up and the down?
Well, back in the day when I took my kids to Disney World, and we did a bunch of parks that over that week.
Okay.
Down in Orlando, I was actually I was not an athlete in those days.
I
was a kind of relatively fit actor, but I smoked.
Okay.
I drank. I was not the kind of health freak that I am today. I was a very different human. So I was tired at the end of every day. I certainly wasn't counting my steps and logging them and trading them for points with my health insurance, which I do now.
Right. Well, I mean, being someone that's conquered the Comrades Marathon and done all that, I mean, conquering the theme parks for a week is a pretty big feat. But interesting, and I don't know that I can even imagine you as not the healthy human you are today and like the super athlete you are. What was that turning point for you?
It was. I went for just a little 5K run one afternoon, and I had what I can only describe as an emphysemic coughing fit. And I mean, I'd been smoking a pack a day at that stage, I was 34 years old, and I'd been smoking since I was in high school.
Wow.
Okay. I'd been quite a rebellious teenager, and I stupidly thought that it was,
cool.
It was a good idea at the time. Yeah. And something flipped in my brain, and I just went, "What are you doing?"
Wow, that's amazing. And you just
Yeah,
made
I
the
think,
change. And
yeah,
then you
it's
just
amazing.
do
It's
all of these
amazing what happens
crazy
when you're
89 kilometers.
faced with your mortality.
So you like physically felt like, oh, this could be it. This is
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
I'm
This
on
is
a
not going to
bad
end
road.
well.
Yeah, this is not
Yeah.
going to end well. Yeah,
Yeah.
it amazes me here in America. I feel people don't get the memo sometimes when they're faced with their mortality. It's like you see, like, oh, I went through this bypass surgery, and then they're back to the same habits. And so it's great that you
Yeah. I'm glad I had that moment. I'm
the
very grateful
epiphany.
that I did. Yeah. And I guess I'm also grateful it happened while I was still relatively young,
Right, right,
and I
right.
was able to change the trajectory of my life and my health. And
I would
it
say you did
certainly
more than change
kickstarted
it. You
things.
went like on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of
Yeah,
person.
all in. Very
I go all
extremes.
in.
Your
Yeah.
extremes. Okay. All in.
Yeah.
I see that. I was like, wow, okay, that's quite the change. That's why I'm like, because of when I met you, of course, and you're doing all these amazing things, ultra marathons and whatnot. I can't even picture this younger, unhealthier Langley. But I think I'm always living vicariously through your bike rides where we drove that route on the hills and the mountains, and it's gorgeous. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I bet it's exhilarating to just kind of feel the wind and see that
Yeah.
scenery. You're gonna live
I
forever
don't,
just in that
I
environment.
don't ride my road bike around Cape Town on wild winter's days like during the weather that you had.
No, it
No, I'm
usually
not.
looks really gorgeous whenever I see your reels and your images. I'm always like, oh, I want to go there. So yeah, I was really grateful that we were able to make that trip.
I hope you're able to make it back when the weather is better.
Yes, I'm gonna consult you before I do that. Where there's
This
like,
time of year is
yes,
good. This is
okay,
this is the
March.
best time.
This is the best.
Yeah.
Well, clearly you're just sitting outside and enjoying
Yeah.
the sunshine, and so I've been, of course, following all of you and your warrior family friends. And I swear it's this like, I still feel like this bit of hope in my heart of
A little bit.
it's a little bit, hope could be a really
Yeah.
dangerous thing in,
Yeah.
like societal, political landscape hope kind of thing. But in terms of warrior, I tell you, every time I see like anything get kind of sparky and reminds us like, nope, it could still come back. It could still come back to life. So what are your feelings?
Never give up.
Never back down, never give up.
No. It's there's that line at the end of the Shawshank Redemption where Tim Robbins' character talks about hope being a good thing.
Yeah.
And I believe it is, it's I know that there's no one in the cast that would say no. If we got the opportunity to do it again, we would be there in a heartbeat. If we could if our schedules would allow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the writers feel the same way. I know Shannon feels the same way. Jonathan Tropper is so busy now with films and television shows that he's running. But, this is his baby. I think if the opportunity arose and someone said, would you, have one last hurrah? I think he'd be all in.
Right. I think you need to just like have little chats with, the universe and all the people that could be players since you're an all in kind of guy.
Yeah. I think so. None of us have really given up on the idea completely.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all holding on to a faint glimmer of hope that something may happen, whether it's a final season or a film that kind of
film
just
to
ties
wrap
up
it.
all the,
Yes. Kind of like the
ties up all the loose
Firefly
threads.
thing.
Yeah, and I guess because it happened once before where we thought we were dead and that was it, and then kind of came back. I think we all feel it's possible.
Right. Absolutely.
And once something has happened, you have that belief that it could happen again. So who knows?
Crazier things have happened. So
crazier things have happened. In fact, we're all jumping onto a Zoom in 2 nights' time, the whole cast, just to kind of say hi. And also, there was a fan who won a competition that Shannon ran, I think.
Okay.
And the prize was a Zoom with all of us. And
wow, amazing.
So that's happening in a couple of nights from now. So that'll be really cool, just to catch up with everyone and see everyone's face again.
Yes. I mean, because I think the last time there was like a big gathering was when we were doing the push for Netflix and everything like that, which was so much effort. And whoever understands that whole algorithm, I had a lot of chats with Hoon and offline chats and you know, this mysterious algorithm. But like, it was just kind of fun to just, it felt like we were playing ball, right? To get like, it was like, all right, we've got a team, and we're like kind of still like running with it, and just like there was like a huddle, and that energy was great. Ironically, I'm actually talking to Brett Chan in a couple days.
Great.
Yeah,
great.
Give him
a virtual hug from me.
I will. Yes. I thought you were going to say a virtual kick or something.
Yeah. Give him a virtual roundhouse from me.
Well, because it's funny, I've been so fortunate to talk to so many of the cast, and everyone obviously adores Brett, but sometimes it's like, those workouts he put us through, there's like a love-hate with it. Was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't, a lot of the time it wasn't really Brett. Brett was, it was always one of Brett's team, usually, who took the workout, and Brett would kind of be sitting on the sidelines, passing comments like, "You're not working hard enough."
Like throwing popcorn at you guys, like,
yeah. Why weren't you here yesterday? What's wrong with you?
Awesome. I can see that. That tracks. Oh gosh, no. I mean, I know that the fans feel equally, if not more, hopeful and just still not losing that energy, because I'll still see, like I said, people are just constantly rehashing different images and we don't want to let go either. So we're all in the same there with that.
Yeah, crazier things have happened.
That's right. Yes, actually, since the last time we spoke, crazier things have happened.
Crazy things really have happened. How are you doing?
Well, I'd rather be at Disney World. And we shared how much I feel about Disney World. It's been jarring. And you and I have had really great conversations where you've schooled me on history, especially over there in Africa, and just like political dynamics, and just we've had really honest conversations, which I've always appreciated. And definitely this has been a very jarring time as the election unfolded and we saw the direction it was headed. It was kind of like, if I had a bunker, I feel like I would be going underground and just going, okay, this is really happening. And it is, honestly, it's one of those things where you hope that everything that administration said in Project 2025 was just, they're just throwing all that crazy out there. They weren't really going to do it, but they're actually doing all these things. They're doing it all. And it is absolutely disheartening to see our country take this direction. And I wonder, are we at our breaking point? When is that actually going to be, as more and more people, that radius of impact closes in? Like, oh, I didn't think that meant me, kind of thing, right? Like what we're seeing with immigrants and what we're seeing with green card holders that are being detained unlawfully, and just, it's kind of crazy. And I don't even know how to explain it, I guess, because this has happened before, but this is much worse, because now it's like I have all the things, and you've seen it in your country, different dynamics of like watching things unfold, that, it's like, how can we be going through this? And how we can't learn from our history, or, this is what happens when we erase history or don't teach it. So I'm, happy to be talking to you. These things keep me sane.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that our countries have this weird link that they do now via this crazy administration.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes. It's
uh,
bizarre, right? Like,
it's bizarre.
yeah, how are
It's
you
bizarre.
doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. It's we're okay here. We're quite far removed, even though we're somehow weirdly connected, and we seem to be more in Trump's focal point, bizarrely, than we were before. I think
Yeah.
largely because of Elon, but I just, it's like I wonder how much of this is all. I always wonder with him: is this the smoke screen, or is this like just him being this crazy,
Right.
this nuts? And it's always hard to tell.
Yeah.
And Elon seems just as crazy and just as weird. And it's like the days when I go, is this just incredibly evil and like really well thought through, or is this just madness? It's
Right.
like those are
Yeah.
the two options,
Yeah, those are
and
the two options.
you kind of go, well, which one is worse? In terms of the consequences.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I guess the stakes, we could say, well, the stakes aren't as high for us as they are for you guys, but ultimately, this is the point. We are all connected.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
what happens in your country definitely is felt here and
Hmm.
all over the world. And yeah, it's what's happening in Europe right now as a result of all of this, and with the Ukraine and Russia, it's just
Hmm.
crazy,
It's crazy.
And there's so many conversations I feel that really need to have been had and be having had by the grown-ups in the room, but it's like, where are all the grown-ups?
Yes.
They're
Yes.
nowhere to be found,
Nowhere to be found.
because there certainly aren't any in mainstream politics that we can see. And it's except Bernie, except
Oh.
people like except people like Bernie and Marianne Williamson, and these people who are, I don't know, it's yeah. Um, I guess this is the problem with politics around the world, historically as well, is that the people that you need there are not the people who generally get up there. Because the people that we need there are the people who are working and running NGOs and NPOs and charity organizations, and helping starving people,
Hmm.
and um, you know this is kind of, where are the leaders?
I know. Well, this is interesting that because we we here in Florida have made international news many times, right? Over the
Hmm.
last several years too, not just like our country as a whole, but Florida specifically has been
Yeah.
very problematic. And it's interesting because everyone's always like, how could you even live there? And people in the United
Hmm.
States who live in other cities, I have schools all over, and
Hmm.
my Kung Fu family is always like, oh, we only hear these things. And I'm like, well, you know, just like every city in the world, there's,
Hmm.
you know, different dynamics of people. There are different opinions. There's different humans here. And it's like, if all of the people here in Florida who believed in equality and rights for women and LGBTQ rights and teaching the true histories and education, if everyone left, then it would be
Hmm.
insanity, right? Like each place, like where would they all go? Like to me, if there's a stronger pull for the need for grassroots leaders here, I feel like I can do better work. Like, I don't feel like
Hmm.
there's anything congressional or federal that I can make any impact on. Like, I feel
Hmm.
like that's just like so out of reach, and it's
Hmm.
so, I don't know, ethereal. Like, it's just this thing, this matter that's happening. But where I'm on the ground, I can see actual change. And it's like it affects the day-to-day humans. And I think what people forget is that those people exist. And yes, it would be amazing if a lot of the grassroots leaders I knew were the president or the vice president or, and making these decisions. But it's like, it just doesn't, the impact is harder to reach, I guess, is, I don't know, because of the system in place, right? I mean, that's the problem is the system, right? The system in place is the problem, but there can actually still be impacts on a grassroots level. And so those people gravitate towards that, me being one of them, right? Because then you're going, wow, this all out here is madness. And there's just like, you have to just chip away, but it's like you chip away from the down up. And it's like, once you get this foundation, like, and then hopefully historically, that's how things get changed over, is like that movement over time. And it's like, we're not going to take out all the administration in the White House and be able to tackle all the bad policies like that necessarily. But like literally on the ground here, doing grassroots work, taking one law at a time or tackling these things. Those are the things that supercharge
what you've been
us.
doing.
Well, I try. I'm for sure not one of the major players here, but just being able to see that work makes a difference.
To quote Casablanca, we all try, you succeed.
Oh, you're the sweetest. Well, I mean, because you've actually been so supportive of my interests and things like that, I did want to share, because I haven't actually talked about, like, people are like, oh, you passed your bill. And it's this tiny thing. It's this little sliver of hope, right? Of, oh, now Floridians get to learn Asian American and Pacific Islander history. This will help the dynamic alongside all the other histories that are supposed to be mandatory. Now, the implementation part is the challenge. Like, the law's there, is it being followed? And they had said, like, once our bill passed, it would be 5 years before we saw anything. And we're pretty excited because we keep pushing. Like, our stuff is already started. And then by this summer, it's already like going into classrooms because we have a seat at the table, but we pushed to have a seat at the table. So this is what I mean, like these little slivers of hope. It's like, it's a tiny thing in this grand scale of all the shit that's happening. But like, wow, this is a really big deal. We got something done in what people said couldn't be done. And then in half the time of when they said it would be done. And so it's like, this supercharges us, right? And then it makes you take on the next little thing and the next little thing, and hopefully pushes other people to all do the same. But I mean, there's more of us than them, supposedly, right? Like, that's the anytime the
how do you get money out of politics? How do we do that?
I don't know, because right now we're in an oligarchy here in the United States.
Yeah. And I think that's the cancer.
Yes.
And that is like you said, that's the whole system. It doesn't really matter which, obviously, whichever party, whether you're left wing or right wing, it influences some of the big picture things that we all fight over. But like a lot of the day-to-day living stuff it doesn't really matter which party's in power. It's just like, it's all corrupt.
Correct.
Because of the money, and because the system is flawed and it is corrupt. So it's bought. It's a bought system. It's our politicians are bought.
Yeah, I mean, and now
you're
outwardly.
Politicians. I mean, it's
Yes.
Now outwardly. I mean, I guess that's like, what the difference is that now it's like, there's transparency in it now. It's like he's just doing it so overtly now without playing by any kind of rules, that you can see it for what it is. It's like, is that maybe the silver lining in this awful reality? Is that we're actually seeing how it's been all along. It's just that he's not playing by the rule book.
My just big fear is that everything he does, he's able to just normalize, right? And so these things that are so heinous, it's not normal. Like, this is not normal. But I was really curious, and not that I want to really spend any time on this other human, like, but what South Africans in general. Not that you represent all of them or anything, but
Yeah.
like what
I
they
don't.
feel
I
about
certainly
Elon,
don't.
like what
Yeah.
they like, what is like in your inner circles anyway, and like the people that, because when I was there, I had this amazing tour guide, and I learned Hosa, and I was learning Shangan and
Yeah.
Zulu, and I was trying, and it was really inspiring when he told me that when he picked up one of his other tourist groups, they were wearing like an Obama shirt, and the entire airport stopped and started to applaud. And I was
Yeah.
just so excited to hear how much love like Michelle and Barack had, because they said like she would go around to the different villages and different, schools, and just that excited me, because I don't know like, oh, how do people feel about this? But especially
Yeah.
Elon, being from there, it's like, what do people
Yeah.
feel about him right now?
Well, I think it's really divided. I think young males, young men, uh, a lot of the young white men here have bought into this kind of Andrew Tate, Elon Musk, Donald Trump kind of MAGA glorification of money and patriarchy and misogyny uh, and objectification of women and chasing the money at all costs, because that's how you prove you're a man. And it's kind of, there's a lot of that here, and also the kind of playing into this whole victim narrative that the young white man is somehow being robbed of his opportunity. And
Right.
so there are a lot of young white men here who walk around with MAGA hats on.
Oh,
I mean, it's crazy, and tragic and sad. And then so it's like we've got to be asking ourselves, I think, as a society, why is this happening? And I think we do have to look at the big picture here, and I think a lot of it has to do with men not having maybe healthy role models a lot of the time. I think, I don't know, it's like the way that the baby boomers raised us. Like my parents were baby boomers. I feel like, I don't know, there's something in the way that we were raised where there was perhaps a like kind of over neglect of children, kind of left to just get on with things and grow up in their own way, where we've flipped the other way and kind of helicopter parented our kids and over parented our kids, so that they haven't been taught resilience. They haven't been taught, we haven't modeled for them, how to be a man in a healthy way.
right.
As society, I mean, this is a collective problem. It's
Yes.
and we can't just sit there as as is always the case, where we point fingers at the other side and go, well, you're bad and you're wrong and I'm right, because everyone's got a different perspective. But it's like, if we do think there's something wrong with the system, how can we fix it? And to figure out how to fix it, we've got to figure out why it's sick. And also be honest about what we can own as a society, where we've made mistakes and how we can do things better. I think there's also a large part of our country, sorry, I'm getting back to the question, there's a large part of our country who can't stand Elon Musk and, just think he's abhorrent as a human, and he represents, something sick. I think we all have our ideas about him because he's such a strange individual. And we can all go, look, I mean, I have my own ideas about his Nazi salute and what that was. I mean, I think that was pretty clear to me what that was.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know the guy. I also, I don't like to make assumptions, because it's kind of where all this shit starts in the
Yeah.
first place. People
Of
make
course, of
assumptions,
course.
we all make
Yes,
assumptions
yes.
about each other. But certainly, from what's out there, it seems like there's a history of white nationalism in his family.
Mm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, yeah, the I think there are a lot of people who worship his money. That's the sad thing.
Yeah, I think there's that.
Uh,
They've done a good job of painting
and they
this
go, well,
picture.
he must be an amazing guy because he's so rich and he's made so much money.
Yeah.
But if you look at the way in which he has made that money, a lot of it has been through kind of jumping onto and taking over great companies that were great ideas, and
Yeah.
then he sells them as his ideas. Sells them off as him having been the amazing genius behind this company
Right.
and the idea. Like Tesla, he didn't make the Tesla. He just took over the company and changed the trajectory of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's good. He's good at that.
He's very good at that. Yeah, these very powerful and impactful, but all in a really negative way. What you and I definitely believe for society. And I was thinking, like, as like each of us are affected in so many different ways. Like every industry across the world is affected by everything happening. I think even actors, right? And like what's happening in terms of like the way work is done, the way like everything changes, because even in Florida, we used to have films being made here, but of course, because Florida went very, very, far right, they're like, oh, we don't want Hollywood types here, so we're not going to do the tax, cut or whatever. So the incentives. And so, therefore nothing's being filmed here. So it's just like little things that people don't realize. Like every industry is impacted by all of the narrative of what's happening. But on any brighter note, I do know every time I catch a show and I get to see you on screen, or I just actually caught Jason Tobin and I didn't realize he was in that show that I just started watching. I'm like, oh, Jason. And it's funny because it's not like I know him that well.
A thousand blows.
Yes. And so it was just great to just every time, one of you lovely warrior family humans pop up on the TV is always a delight. Like I knew you would be in One Piece. So that was like, it wasn't like a surprise. But so I, of course, follow all the work you're doing. But it's always nice when we get to kind of see someone that you feel like, I got to speak to him once. I feel familiar. And you guys always celebrate one another, which I always think is fantastic as well.
I didn't have Disney Plus. I just took out a subscription with Disney Plus so that I could watch Jason in 1,000 Blows.
Oh, I love that. Well, because Disney Plus, Hulu, it's all like together now. And so, and it's been really fun. I'm like, boy, that guy just, he's like a different person in it's not Chinatown, but like, he's like in the same, almost feels like the same era, he's just like, he's playing a different guy that would have been on the set in Warrior. It's like, he like switched characters, but it's fun. It's been fun. And so I would love to know, because you and I spoke offline, but what you've been doing creatively, because as a creative, I feel like it can be very jarring to try to work in a scope of when things are so depressing around the world, and especially like just to be able to like tap into those things. And so what is it you've been doing?
So, there've been a lot of kind of piecemeal jobs. As an actor, you kind of do guest stars on different shows and you take roles in films. And I've been doing various bits and pieces. And I'm about to start shooting a very interesting feature film, which is going to be shot over the next 2 months here in Cape Town. It's an American studio film, which I can't talk about at all.
Of course.
but
that's nice that you don't have to leave, right? That it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's at home. And at the same time, the last 4 months, I've been writing a film script, and I'm midway through my second draft. And it's so strange how these things happen. In the middle of last year, when you were here, as you know, I was shooting a feature film. In the Alps, in the Austrian Alps, and that was a World War II period drama. And I was playing a escaped British POW And the name of the film is Mein Soldat, which is German for my soldier. And it's a love story, essentially, between an Austrian woman and an escaped British POW who's trying to make it over the Alps into Switzerland. And they meet and fall in love. And I'll keep you posted on that. But we're hoping for that to be out and doing festivals and circuits around the world in about May of this year.
Oh, wow.
So, fun. But I came home, and I'm not sure if it was just spending time in that period, or if it was just luck, or whether it was kind of what's going on in the world right now, and thinking back to that period a lot. But I had an idea based on a really amazing true story to write another feature film set in the Second World War, also focusing around POWs, but this time South African POWs, South African servicemen who were, taken captive in the desert, North Africa, by Rommel's troops. And it's the story of some South Africans who ended up in a Polish POW camp in the north of Poland. And it was, so I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of writing.
Right. I was going to say, how's that research rabbit hole going?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy what is happening.
Yes.
With this administration right now. It honestly is like if you look at Hitler's playbook and, dismantling the old structures in Nazi Germany in the early 30s. Yeah, your guys, he's doing the same thing right now. I mean, it's unmistakable.
Yeah. Your
guy and our guy. Those two
together in the Oval Office.
Man, it's interesting because I have, people I know, when I comment on this, people say, "Oh, come on, you're being melodramatic, you're being over the top."
Yeah, they get so
please,
defensive, right? Like it's not a parallel. I'm like, have you researched history? Because I don't know it that well, but it looks pretty clear. But you've been researching it, and it must be super crazy to see the parallel.
It really is like a playbook. He's doing it almost step by step.
Attack on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Demonizing the others, immigrants, people of color.
And gutting huge, functional state enterprises and, talking of privatizing them. But, getting rid of all the people that are in there and filling them with his own cronies. It's kind of like what Hitler did. So it's terrifying. So I think it's important that we revisit history and learn from those lessons.
So instead of being fantasy and like escaping in your writing, you decided to go towards all the drama and the dissonance that's happening.
Run towards it.
all in, Langley.
Yeah. There's something, I don't know, I find something fascinating about the kind of men that volunteered to fight in the Second World War. Because, the South Africans who fought for the Allies in the Second World War, there was no conscription here. They weren't drafted in. They signed up to go and fight, and they signed up to go and fight in a war that had nothing to do with their country, other than South Africa was part of the Commonwealth. At that stage, we were no longer a colony. It was the South African, Union, and we were part of the Commonwealth, but there was no obligation to king and country.
Yes.
And certainly a lot of the population that went to go and fight, had there were a lot of Afrikaners went and fought for the Allies, and a lot of black and colored, so-called colored servicemen, people who in South Africa were referred to as colored, so basically mixed race people. They were referred to as the Colored Corps. And they went to fight as well. And I mean, that's a part of my film script as well. That's woven into it. You know, there were these guys who signed up to go and fight a war in Europe, in the theater of war being mostly in that time in Europe. And this was the place of the colonizers, you know, the people who had come and colonized Africa. And yet a lot of these Black South Africans and non-white South Africans signed up and went to go and fight. And then when they got there, where they were treated like second-class citizens, and instead of being handed modern weapons, they were mostly handed shovels and picks and told to dig trenches and latrines. That was their duty. That was their work. And they were, you know, and some of them were truck drivers and messengers, but almost none of them actually were given modern weapons to fight alongside their compatriots. Even though some of them had rank, they weren't given rank higher than non-commissioned officers. And what's even more insulting is that when some of them arrived for military service, they were given traditional weapons, spears and what we call knobkerries here, which is essentially it's a club.
Like a club.
Yeah. To fight against tanks and machine guns.
Right. I'm like, what period were they fighting in compared to?
Yeah.
Wow.
So then when these Black servicemen were interned in prison camps, first of all, there's the racism that they were experiencing from their own compatriots, which was rife. But then there was the racism the racism from the Nazi captors, which you can imagine was also not great, given the Nazi policy of Untermenschen, you know, under people of other race being below them on the class line or the racial class line, or whatever weird classification the Nazis had. But it's like, if you weren't Aryan, you were less than.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there was also this weird racism that was built into the Geneva Convention, where the Black servicemen were not recognized as real servicemen. So that when they got to the POW camps, the Nazi captors said, well, listen, you know, it's not us. This is the Geneva Convention. So there was no accountability there. And as the war progressed, the Nazis actually started paying more and more attention to the Geneva Convention as the writing was on the wall, and the future was clearer in terms of which way the war was going. Like, the Nazis started behaving better and better with the POWs, because they were fearful of retribution, obviously. But none of that applied to the Black servicemen.
Well, that's all very depressing.
Sorry, I seem to have this effect on you whenever we get into a history discussion. I always go for the darkest part. But
I mean, it's also because you're so responsible about. You always take that accountability. Like, I need to learn the history. I need to know. And then so now you're like writing about it. Was writing like therapeutic though, even though it was this dark subject? How did you find the process? Is that the first thing you've written, or?
No. So I mean, I've been writing.
Yeah,
I've written before. Yeah. This is the first time that I've actually finished a screenplay.
Oh,
I've started
congratulations.
So many. Thank you. I've started lots of screenplays. I've written a book, which I still haven't published. I'm still rewriting that. But, you know, I wrote a couple of pilots for TV shows. This is the first time I've actually written a completed screenplay that I'm excited about, that I'm actually happy with. Okay. And I feel like, wow, this is good. So the subject matter is a lot more uplifting than it sounds.
Okay.
because that is just one element of the film.
Of course.
And it's one kind of subplot and a thread in the film. And I can't really talk about.
Of course, you can't share the whole thing, but I think in general, service is inspiring, right? Those who give their lives for others is an inspirational thing. And I always feel, regardless of even the politics of things, it's like anybody who decides like, this is what I'm going to serve, for a belief that they feel is the right thing. It's really a selfless thing, and takes a certain mindset for sure.
Absolutely. And, there's men, from all over the world that wanted to fight against fascism.
Yes.
So, and it was a different time with a different kind of man. And it feels like it was, I suppose things were clearer in terms of it was, I don't know if things were more kind of binary then, or if it was just that the smoke screens were more cleverly built.
There was no social media.
There was no social media and very little accountability.
And there wasn't all this extra propaganda for us to get caught up in, because if it's online, it's obviously true, right?
Yeah.
So
of course,
obviously. Yeah. I think though, do you have like because I'm like you in that, I've been writing, right? It was like my documentary took me like 10 years, but I did it and it's done. And but with the writing thing, it's this process where sometimes you just don't know where it's going to go, and you just go, well, I'm just going to keep at it. And so this is really exciting. You're kind of downplaying it, but to have something completed is really an achievement. I don't think people realize what a big deal it is, because it's like that completion of thought, and then to be able to feel good about it. Like, I'm super excited for you. I know like there's other stages to this in terms of celebration, but do you do something kind of nice for yourself when you say, wow, I just did a thing and it was a really good thing? It's an achievement. Like, I know you've achieved a lot, being that you're this ultra marathon winner and you do all this crazy stuff, but I feel like there should always be little mini joy snacks for ourselves. Like, did you do something? Yeah. Did you go to La Colombe or the test kitchen?
You know what? I finished the first draft on the plane on my way back to Austria to go skiing in the beginning of the year, in January. Okay. Like it was, I think, the 2nd of January. So I had a week of skiing in the Alps as a celebration. Okay. for having finished my first draft. Yes. And I didn't look at my laptop for the entire time I was there.
Oh, that's a win. That's definitely a win. I'm impressed that you could write on the plane.
Well, I was so close to the end.
Right.
I was like, I can't be going on holiday without this being done.
Boy, you really took it to the end of the time. I really did. The deadline.
I did. Yeah.
So you work well under pressure and deadlines. I
do. I think slightly ADHD, and that thing about the last minute, pressure. It certainly helps me. So it's been interesting that there's been a lot of research.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of research. Which is exhaustive.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting process, because there's stuff that has just come so easily, elements to the story that have just, because I'm writing about some real characters that were really alive and living through all of this.
So it's like historical fiction, but it's based on historical.
So it's based on an
real
amazing
events and people.
Exactly, based on an incredible true story that happened. And yet there are elements to it where I have to use my imagination and kind of find a common thread of how things were, using other references and make it work, because there's no record of certain periods in the story.
Yeah.
There's very little written history of what went on in the POW camps, especially with these South African soldiers, because in 1945, as the Russians were advancing on the Eastern Front, the Germans pulled back into Germany and they pulled all the POWs with them. So they had what was called the Death March, where all of these Allied POWs had to march like hundreds of miles west, mostly in winter, at the beginning of 1945, into Germany, and they were starving as well, and because there was just no food.
Right.
The end was nigh for the Nazis, and so you can imagine everything was in disarray, and the food lines were almost completely severed. So they were just, it was a fight to survive.
Right.
So even the men that had journals and had diarized, their whole state, they ended up just tossing them.
Right.
So there was
all these lost historical documents.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you have to get going, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm hoping that we know how World War II ended, and it was messy, and it was not good, and it was definitely problematic, but it did end. And so I hope that there will be an end to the era of what's happening now, and it doesn't get to the point of where people are getting passed out spears and clubs and things again. And like this whole dynamic, I feel like hopefully there's a more modern way for people to feel inspired to fight back, whatever that means, right? And to be able to have a voice. And I certainly hope so for where you're at, and obviously for where I'm at. And I always appreciate you. I do want to ask you one, which I think will not go into a dark direction, question before we log off, which is, I've had the pleasure of talking to you while you've like cooked dinner, because I know that you always like host, and yet you're into culinary, and we call you Langley, but what is on the menu in this last week, or what have you cooked lately?
Last night was pasta and meatballs.
Oh, classic.
Classic. But tonight it's duck.
Ooh, duck.
It's a duck magret, which is a French style.
Fancy.
Duck breast cooked almost like a steak.
Okay.
So it's done. It's broiled, as you would say in the US. We would say grilled here, but you would say broiled.
Grilled. Okay.
And it's just done broiled in a pan on high heat, and it's so that it's rare in the middle. So it's pink in the middle, but it's nice and done on the outside, and then with a creamy cognac sauce. It's French style.
Yes. Very
but you got to flambe. You got to flambe the cognac.
Okay. Of course you have to.
Yeah.
Naturally. You do it in the pan. Naturally.
Yeah,
and then you go tableside, flambe the cognac, and then pour it on and plate it right there at the eating al fresco outside.
Something like that.
Yes. Okay.
That's on the menu.
Now I'm hungry. So thank you. And it is lunch for me at this time. So I'm sure you're going into dinner time. But wow. Well, that sounds fantastic and fabulous. And we're all jealous and hungry now. And I know that we'll keep the hope alive in so many ways for Warrior, for the world, for all of us, that humanity wins. Don't give up. Yeah, that's it. Don't give up, like you said. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. It's always a pleasure, and I always learn so much.
It's a great pleasure, Mimi. So good to see you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.